Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
The internet is full of half-truths and all-out lies. We've all seen them, and many people on social media complaining about it. Here's your chance to show and prove. WorldAfropedia.com is a black-owned and operated encyclopedia. There are several thousand articles, but we need help. We can't uncover all the truth ourselves. So please, join us and become a writer, editor, or blogger for WorldAfropedia.com today. Every little bit counts. We owe it to the future generations to put the truth out there. Visit WorldAfropedia.com, the African-centered encyclopedia, a global database of African knowledge for the purpose of bringing about global African wisdom and understanding. WorldAfropedia.com.
Seattle's a great place to visit because it has, I guess you could say, a little bit of everything, but I like to think of it as a lot of everything.
For the fourth year running, employees of REI have the day off today. The Co-op stores are all closed on the biggest retail day of the year, and its website won't process any sales. REI says its opt-outside movement is growing. More from KNKX environment reporter Bellamy Palethorpe.
The idea of opt-outside is to encourage people to get outdoors and enjoy nature instead of working or shopping, especially on Black Friday. REI estimates more than 700 other organizations are now taking part. This year, the co-op has also teamed up with the Trust for Public Land to rank the 200 largest cities in the country on access to the outdoors. REI Vice President Alex Thompson says they looked at proximity to local parks within a 10-minute walk and to public lands within a 60-minute drive.
And what we're really trying to do with this list is to encourage people to think about going outside on Black Friday instead of staying indoors. And we're also equipping decision makers with information should they want to make the places that they live in and influence better in terms of outdoor access.
Seattle, Bellevue, and Vancouver, Washington all made the top 50 list. Tacoma did not. REI says more than 2 out of 3 people living in the largest 200 cities in the U.S. still lack sufficient access to the outdoors. Bellamy Palethorpe, KNKX News.
Come here, Susie. You remember me? Your daddy's friend, Henry?
No, don't!
Now we have the story of what happened to a business after it was forced to change its leadership. John Besh was arguably the best-known chef in New Orleans, and he was also the owner of a New Orleans restaurant group. Then he was accused of sexual harassment. He's hardly the only top executive to go during the Me Too movement. Many entertainment and finance and media companies, including NPR, have dismissed executives. NPR's Yuki Noguchi followed up on what happened at those New Orleans restaurants.
A year ago, the New Orleans Times-Picayune published a shattering expose on celebrity chef John Besh. It detailed 25 allegations that depicted a harrowing workplace in which Besh belittled and fondled workers or tried to coerce them to have sex. Dominique Ranieri, a former server and one of Besh's accusers, says she was terminated after her allegations appeared in the story. She says such behavior permeated Besh's restaurants.
Groping, sexual advances, verbally, physically, constant commentary. The commentary was, oh God.
That story became a watershed moment for the restaurant industry. 2 weeks prior, similar allegations against Hollywood executive Harvey Weinstein had emerged, kickstarting the Me Too movement. That spotlight then turned on Besh, a local hero who helped champion Creole cuisine on the national stage.
Hello, I'm Chef John Besh, and welcome to New Orleans.
Cleaning up the mess fell to Shannon White. She was 32 and chief of operations when she replaced Besh as CEO. We first met at a bustling lunch spot serving Southern biscuits and shrimp and grits, one of 11 remaining restaurants in the group White is trying to revamp.
Finding out that people didn't feel safe coming forward, it's like a kick in the stomach. And we have to do something. right now.
Overnight, Besh's national fame turned into a liability. It left a scar on the restaurant group and its 1,200 employees at the time. Staff defected. 7 restaurants eventually closed or spun off. The company rebranded itself to BRG to erase his name.
It was hard. You have guests calling and being hateful on the phone and seeing all the stuff in the media.
Free-flowing alcohol and late-night work make restaurants a notorious hotbed for sexual harassment, especially so near the glow of Bourbon Street. White says she felt both public and internal pressure to change her company's culture.
And you have employees and you have guests and you have orders, but you can't push pause and say, all right, we're going to redo this, at all. What can we do to start to make change while the wheels are already in motion?
She had to keep the restaurants running and at the same time dramatically change the culture. The company allowed me in to see how they tried to do that. Over several months, they let me sit in on meetings and talk to employees. I watched as they grappled with how to build a new culture.
It is eye-opening. People think it's all about sexual harassment. I'm like, it's so much bigger than that.
She says it's tied up with trust, communication, power dynamics, and respect. But initially, White needed to ferret out and fire the bad apples. The company set up an anonymous tip line that led to investigations. Eventually, 4 managers and a dozen other workers were dismissed. Many others left over time.
A lot of people aren't going to make it through this, and as a culture starts to shift, you see very clearly it brings to light the people that aren't willing to shift with it.
One early change included ending employee alcohol discounts, which White says helped fuel misbehavior. But many new rules couldn't be as cut and dry. White recalls how, in the initial weeks of the scandal, she proposed banning dating among workers. Some workers pushed back. The company hired Dawn Hazen as its first human resources director. She also pushed back.
Not realistic. It's not realistic, and we're setting ourselves up for failure.
Instead, they now require workers to disclose relationships to avoid potential conflicts of interest. As in that case, White and Hazen say soliciting input helps set realistic rules and get buy-in from workers. And sometimes policies evolved over time. Take its policy on touching. In August, I watched the back and forth as White and Hazen met to discuss updates to the employee handbook with restaurant managers. White poses the question, should the language bar customers from touching staff? That prompts the managers to debate.
We have regulars that come in that are just going to hug you, absolutely. And they're like family. They're like family at the restaurant. But
in another context, he says, hugs are unwelcome.
It's just that has to be that gut feeling.
You have to be able to read it.
2 months after that meeting, in late October, Hazen leads employee orientation for 50 new bartenders, cooks, and servers. The company's preparing to open its first new restaurant since the scandal.
Okay, is everybody seated and ready?
Here, touching comes up again, with greater nuance.
I know in the restaurants, they're very close quarters.
Hazen suggests warning coworkers before squeezing by.
Say, coming behind or something like that, to give them a chance to get out of the way.
And if it's a customer being inappropriate, tell your manager, she tells them. Rita Bernhardt says such open discussion makes a difference. Bernhardt is chef de cuisine at Domenica, one of the group's Italian restaurants. In the past, she says personnel decisions were left to a manager's discretion. But now, Bernhardt is required to report any problems immediately. She says White and Hazen are very responsive.
We're going to solve this right now. We're going to fix this. Let's follow through. I think that's kind of the biggest shift that I've seen.
It's still too early to say what the effect of all these changes might mean. But some say the problems haven't gone away. Brett Anderson is the reporter who broke the Times-Picayune story.
In the year since that story came out, I've spent a lot of time listening to restaurant workers, mostly women, tell me about the problems they've faced with harassment. And those phone calls aren't stopping, really.
Including, he says, some workers who say little has changed within the Besh restaurants. Through a representative, Besh declined an interview for this story. Anderson says his continued ownership remains controversial.
I know that it matters to some employees, and I know it matters to some customers that he is still an owner of the company.
Even White admits that in subtle ways, Besh's ownership still weighs on the company.
The goal in the past was always to give ownership to the chefs over time. I'd like to see that speed up.
Now she says she wants to set a vision without Besh around. Yuki Noguchi, NPR News, New Orleans.
I don't want to cause any problems, Lieutenant. I just want a new partner.
Oh, I understand. Your partner's a racist prick, but you don't want to stir up any bad feelings with him.
Well, he's been on the force for a long time.
17 years.
And I do have to work here, sir.
So, you don't mind that there's a racist prick on the force. You just don't want him to ride in your car.
If you need me to go on record about this, sir, I will.
That'd be great. Write a full report. Because I'm anxious to understand how an obvious bigot could have gone undetected in this department for 17 years. 11 of which he was under my personal supervision, which doesn't speak very highly of my managerial skills. But that's not your concern. I can't wait to read it.
Metro Council held their first meeting today to talk about how to set up a community oversight board. On election night, Davidson County voted to form a police oversight committee to look into deadly police shootings and other controversies. Tonight, Lindsay Nance talks to a Metro officer who says she's caught a lot of heat for standing up in favor of this board. Lindsay?
Monica Blake says she was verbally attacked and called a traitor by the very people she works with every day.
For a long time, I lived in fear. I was afraid of, I was terrified for a long time.
Terrified to speak out, to voice her opinion, to stand up to her fellow police officers.
I had executed every single channel within the police department that I was supposed to make complaints to. Yet when I made those complaints, nothing happened. So I decided that if something were to happen, I was going to have to bring those issues to the public. One, as a means to protect me, and two, to let the citizens of Nashville know this is what's going on right in your city.
Metro Police tells me they are unaware of any complaints by Blake. They are aware of her social media posts. The latest one, just days ago, causing the biggest stir. Blake says this post is the one that triggered a firestorm of comments. She believes they're all directed at her. Comments like this one. Never thought I would see the day that a Metro officer would turn against her fellow officers. Wonder whose back she is watching, or better yet, who's watching hers. What goes around comes around.
I was devastated, absolutely devastated, because I couldn't understand why so many officers didn't see inclusiveness as a good thing.
Now, Blake filed a lawsuit against Metro Police saying she's faced racial discrimination for a long time and she wants compensation. She also wants Metro to amend their social media policy so she and others can speak freely. The Metro Department of Law will now be defending this lawsuit. Tom, Tracy.
Lindsay Nance, thank you.
Context of White Supremacy. Gus T Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Friday, November 23rd, 2018. So I have been told. This is our weekly forum on neutralizing workplace racism. Still adjusting to it being on Fridays. Probably take me a few more months. The number to dial, 641-715-3640. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Our listeners in the States, I hope everyone made it through Nigger Friday safely. If you participated, have all of your toes, offspring accounted for. If you all were out in the hustle and bustle of the day. I thought that was so Seattle, the opening report about REI, which is a Seattle-based company. They sell all kinds of camping gear and such. But their opt-out campaign of not being open today and not even processing sales online, I thought that was such a Seattle white way of protesting Nigger Friday. If you are engaging in any of the nonsense associated with what is commonly called Black Friday, feel free. You can pitch in Gus's Amazon. It's under Gus T Renegade. It is linked on my blog, racism-notes.blogspot.com. if you are doing what they call Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Coon Wednesday, any of it, you can nab an item from Gus T's wish list in all of the mayhem if you are participating. That said, the plantation continues. I think technically the holiday is over, at least for, right now. I guess they have another one next month, but so it's just normal day on the plantation, which it always is. And I'm sure some folks had to be on the formal plantation today. And if not, I'm sure it's calling soon. So, workplace racism, per usual, this is not a spectator broadcast. If you did participate in the nonsense and, had several rounds of pie, chitlins, whatever it is, and are feeling satisfied, satiated food-wise, that does not mean, oh, I'm going to put my feet up and just listen. Not at all. This is not for spectating. This is for our participating, and I'm pretty sure if we have victims of racism, you're probably having some issues in the workplace. And or if you're not, you should certainly be participating to tell us how you got into this glorious position where if you need time off, vacation days, they don't call you. They weren't ringing you yesterday. Hey, put that turkey leg down. We need you to come in and work a shift. They don't do that to you. No way. You had your vacation in months ago. You are at home chilling and will not be bothered until, next week or whenever you're scheduled to be back in. But if you have got to that glorious position, then you absolutely, it is your counter-racist duty to dial in and share some tips because we need that sort of help. There are a lot of victims who are suffering and do not imagine that they will ever be in that position on the job. I know that I have never been. Number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. If you're not able to dial in for the live broadcast, you can drop an email untiljustice@gmail.com. Untiljustice@gmail.com. And we can read your commentary, or if you have a question, we can read it on the air. A few things before I get to the callers, the segment where they were talking about the changes that were happening at the food business in New Orleans. I thought it was important. The victim, he says, sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. How can you mention New Orleans, Hurricane Katrina, and the levee failure? How can you mention New Orleans and not mention racism, white supremacy? Sobriety would be best. They said the alcohol, free-flowing alcohol and late nights on Bourbon Street made the sexual harassment problems exacerbated, made worse the sexual harassment problems. No surprise. Sobriety would be best. If folks have specific issues with the so-called holidays, that would be grand to hear. I know we try to bring that up around this time every year, the unique problems that may come up with the holidays, if they have any sort of gift exchanges. I know they have that sometimes. It might be the season for hugging. I know sometimes whites want to pretend that we're a family, right? We're on the job, so we're all in this together. So they might want to try and do some extra fondling on the job this time of year. That's something to be mindful of as well. But if folks are having any holiday-related issues, that would be grand to hear. I know sometimes they even have those parties that are required. We talked about that before too. This is the time of year. Sometimes you're required to attend. Sometimes you're not. We've talked about that before as well in terms of, do you even have to go with the shindigs? If you do have to go, be codified. And if it's not required, you don't think it's going to damage you in the long run for promotions and such, then try to avoid. Certainly, sobriety would be best if you have to attend even for a limited amount of time. Next, They mentioned in that same report about New Orleans, they mentioned about trying to institute a policy about not dating coworkers, which I thought was very interesting. That's frequently a metaphor that I will use when talking about the incorrectness of sexual intercourse between whites and non-whites, because in a number of work environments, that is an explicit policy that they'll have, that there's not to be any sort of sexual intercourse, because, if it's a manager and someone that they're supervising type thing, that they, have undue influence over this person. So they try and discourage that sort of thing. If we have listeners, if that's a part of your workplace policy, I would be very interested to hear details about that. If you have the explicit part of the policy, in what it says, I would definitely be grateful to hear that, if that applies to any of our listening audience. If you don't have it explicitly, if you just want to kind of paraphrase or give us your understanding, that would be fine too. But if anyone is currently or has worked in a job situation where that's an explicitly stated, a part of, what is required of you, no hanky panky, as they say, with other coworkers, I would definitely appreciate hearing the details about that. And I thought it was interesting in that segment that I guess they were trying to institute that policy and they got pushback from the workers. And so it seemed like that they didn't, go ahead and follow through with that after enough workers balked at them attempting to put this policy in. Very interesting. I would generally discourage sexual intercourse on the job. I guess if folks have an opinion on this, that would be, I'm a little surprised. I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I would generally say, even if it's non-white people, I would generally discourage sexual intercourse on the job. I think that can cause a lot of confusion. We talk so much on workplace racism, emphasizing being logical, managing your emotions. I put that in every single description because I think that's so key in the workplace, not allowing your emotions to dictate your conduct, your speech, what you're doing, how you are responding and planning what you're going to do in the workplace. It cannot be driven by your emotions. You want to use logic, do some thinking, strategize, long-term problem solving. And with the emotion, I think just invariably, if you are what they call dating, quote unquote, romantically involved with someone, that's going to bring a lot of emotion in. That's what I've generally seen. That's been my personal experience. And I just think that in the workplace, and I think we've even had some listeners where they talked about that causing problems, even if it's, a non-white person and another non-white person. I would generally discourage that sort of thing. And whites in particular, even if it's a non-white person, another non-white person, and they're in, whatever type of arrangement they have, and whites find out about this, I am very certain that they would look to cause a lot of problems, both within the relationship and within the careers of both individuals. If people have thoughts on that, feel free, but that would be my general thought process about it. That word discretion came up in the report as well. I thought that was key. One other comment I'll get in about the audio clips, the segment about the black enforcement officer Blake, black female. There's video of that if you need to see her. But we've had a number of different segments and even programs. The Fence, written by Dick Lair, white man suspected racist up in the Boston area. He wrote the book about, it was a black officer in Boston. They were out chasing a suspect. I believe it was a white man that they were chasing, in fact, but that's neither here nor there. They were chasing a suspect. He eluded them. The black officer he's chasing, he gets to a fence, and his coworkers, they beat him bloody, leave him unconscious at the fence, and they say that they thought it was the suspect. Now, maybe they were chasing a non-white suspect. Maybe it was a white suspect. I think it was a white suspect, but it's been, Mr. Lair was on the program in 2009, so it's been almost 10 years. Anywho, they beat him almost unconscious. He has to go to the hospital and all of this. all he wants is an investigation. He is not coming out saying that these are race soldiers. He is not demanding that Al Sharpton come and hold a march at the precinct. All he wants is an investigation to find out what happened. Why did this happen to me? Let's make sure that's all that he wants. They had him under total terrorism. Like, who is this nigger? He's going to try to get us in trouble. It's not our fault that we thought this cop nigger was just a regular no count nigger and blah, blah, blah. Long list of these type of incidents of black enforcement officers who said, sometimes they said explicitly, I joined the police department to fight against racism. I saw how black citizens were mistreated and I wanted to work against that, or something along those, or just, the standard line. I just wanted to be a citizen, chance to be a job. Hey, I'll come protect and serve, as they say. And then they end up being subjected to all this terrorism. We've even had black officers, former black police officers on the program. And that segment reminded me that is one of the few work environments where it's not just my suspected racist coworkers might retaliate by spitting in my food or, playing some pranks on me. They actually have guns and could kill me. And or we are in situations that could be fatal where they, because they are armed, might be required to protect my life. They might be required to give me CPR. Like these folks are saying, hey, maybe we don't give this nigger CPR. Maybe we don't have her back if we go into a dark alley and are chasing someone who is armed, and one of those black identity extremists who doesn't like us white cops. Maybe we don't have her back. That's one of the few work environments that I can think of. That is, I remember a guest we had on the program talked about that. Being the same way, just speaking out for justice as a enforcement official, doing the right thing on the job and stepping into the room and feeling like, wow, they got their gun. I need to unholster to be prepared. Like anything could go down. Like, what a work environment. Anywho, last thing I'll say before I get to the callers, policy and procedure. I did mention if you have any folks who work in an environment where you cannot do dating, that is definitely a time where I would be very, very appreciative of hearing explicit policy and procedure. But last thing, I always think reflection can be a very powerful tool. That's why they talk about things like journaling can be very powerful, because it allows you an opportunity to kind of assess things that have happened. You can critique your own performance, things you did incorrect, things you did well, how you would assess the situation if it came up again. Can be great opportunities to learn. Still learning, we all are. I think specifically with the workplace, reflection, counter-racist reflection, not just, thinking back, oh man, I got fired, it was so humiliating, but I mean really like specific, explicit critique, detailed like investigation of as much or as many of the incidents around your particular work experience, maybe all of your work experiences, job by job, for as long as you stayed there. I think it can reveal a lot, especially if you're looking at periods when you did not have an accurate understanding of racism. And I think that's one we could all participate in. I think every single person who is listening live should be able to participate to give at least one incident. If I was going to ask, not asking for what you are grateful for, it's such a tacky thing in the system, not to get off topic, but so tacky, but asking, reflecting on our work experience, do a little counter-racist work reflection. I'm calling these errors. That's what I'm calling these. These are errors. These are times, wow. If I had known a little bit more about counter-racism and or if I had just implemented counter-racist logic, this wouldn't have happened, or this would have been radically different. This would have been, 3 or 10 problems I could have avoided. I can give you, oh man, how much time do we have? I would need many, many hours to go through to give you some of these. Hopefully, I will not be adding to this list, or if I do, it will be a much shorter list. Moving forward, I believe the white woman that did my prenatal yoga teacher training might be inquiring if I would like to work doing prenatal yoga training. So I might be even getting more opportunities to add to the list because I actually do enjoy teaching prenatal yoga and specifically teaching to non-white moms. We'll have to update as I get more details, but then I would have more to share on workplace racism. But errors, that's what I'm calling these. Maybe a better term, errors. So some of the errors, times where things would have been better for me personally if I had known more about racism, white supremacy. Some of them are simple. Not having a candy dish. One of the jobs that I had a candy dish in my office, and it was communal. I didn't care if people came to get candy, even if they came if I wasn't present and they wanted a piece of candy. I didn't care. Not to get off into that because I feel like I talked about this before, but it ended up being stolen and simply avoided. And I think that's the logic that I generally give you. We're in a system of racism, white supremacy. The mistreatment abounds. You want to try to minimize opportunities for that, minimizing things that can be taken that don't belong to you, and minimizing reasons for people to come and malinger in your area, talking to you unnecessarily. That's another big aspect, just wasting time. And, a lot of we've had specific incidents of that before. I remember we had a black female. She had a communal candy dish on her desk, and it just became an opportunity for racist white men to come and make sexual comments under the guise of requesting chocolate. Welsing moment. Other errors, I'm still talking about me. No drinking. I remember I'm not even a big alcohol fan, and I remember drinking. We used to have staff meetings. They would go to the bar for staff meetings, and I remember drinking with white people. There was never a problem. Like, it was never one of those, got so drunk and they had pictures of me on the table vomiting or something like that. However, it did set up the expectation that I would participate in drinking with them. And when I didn't want to do that anymore, it became a problem. That's what I mean about sometimes it might not even be acute, but it's just about setting up correct expectations. We talk about that a lot, particularly once you start a job, being able to set correct expectations about how you're treated, making sure they say your name correctly every time. No nicknames on the job. That's another one I could add to my list I hadn't even thought of. But just correct expectations, and I think that drinking one is big. I plan to be sober as long as I am employed here and around you all. I will be sober and thinking to the best of my ability, because I know you all are not going to be looking out for my best interest. I got my back. The hate you give. I'm still on my list here. Talking to that white girl. Man, I've talked about this on the program before. One job that I had, there was a white girl, my quote-unquote friend. Her office was in the front of the building, so it made it about 8 billion times worse, because to talk to her, I had to be out like literally in the front of the building, like almost directly across from like the director's office and all of the main most powerful whites who worked there. And it just became such a massive, oh my God, just cowbell. It became such a massive issue that because I knew her brother, so I think I went to school with her brother and talked about this on the program before, not to get off on that, but man, not being friendly. You are not there to hang out and kick it. This is not pal time. And in particular, I would say with any black male, I would not be doing any palling around or anything that even looks like, oh, wait a minute, maybe they're a thing, or is he flirting? Was that nothing with anybody on the job? I'm here about business. And that is that. No flirting, no kicking it, no nothing. Because that will get, man, the rumors and the racism, white supremacy, and the accusation, Dr. Tommy Curry, the man, not those accusations abound anyway. You don't have to do anything for those to percolate, so you do not want to even give the impression that you are hanging out, kicking it, friendly, doing anything other than business. Not asking questions. That's a great one to end on. Not asking questions. That is one of the most major errors. I was not someone to ask questions, to specifically think, oh, or even going into the meeting, I already have 5 questions that I want answered right now. I've looked at the policy and I want this clarified, that clarified. What does this word mean? Like questions, like not coming in to make statements. This is not the time to show what I know. Certainly if you have ideas, if you're in a field where you have to present ideas and things of that nature, great. But asking questions is so important. And yes, we are in a system of racism, white supremacy, but I would even say that there are times where asking questions on the job works in your favor. It makes you look as though you are someone who is using your brain, trying to get a better understanding of how things work on the job, requesting information so that you can be more informed as you do your job. That can sometimes be a good thing on the job. Sometimes it's just a system of racism, white supremacy, and you are just a uppity question asking Negro. Still, even with that, ask questions, and that is a major error on my part. That's something that I just didn't do when I did not have an understanding of racism, white supremacy, what it meant to be white. I did not ask questions on the job. That is an imperative. If you don't remember anything else from the Neutralizing Workplace Racism programs, you have got to ask questions on the job. If you are not asking questions on the job, you are making errors, and it's probably going to lead to problems. You're probably going to find yourself at some point saying, man, there's information that I don't have, or just having problems. Ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. You might even want to be known for asking questions politely, often, and make sure that you get your question answered. We talked about that even with email. Ask questions. Number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Errors. Again, that's one I think we can all participate. So that is the request, not what you are grateful for, but at least one error that you've made on the job. When I say error, this is a situation, time maybe when I didn't have an understanding of racism, white supremacy, or it could be, oh, I did know about racism, white supremacy, but for whatever reason, I just was not following through on my code this day, and boop, this is what happened. Lesson learned. Follow, or I wish I had been aware of counter-racist logic at the time, and I would not have had this situation. Let's see. Hitting the phone lines. If you dialed in, star 61. If you have commentary to share, hitting the phone lines. If you have a hand up, line should be open.
I guess.
Stacy in the UK. Let's see. Get our timestamp. 1:40 a.m. Saturday morning, live in London. Yes, ma'am. Did not think this will be our one person who is not full of turkey and giblets. Stacy joining us live.
No, we don't do Thanksgiving, but I believe it was, as you called it, Nigger Friday today. I did actually purchase something from your Amazon wish list, but I wasn't actually paying attention to the fact that it was so-called Black Friday, and I'd forgotten all about it actually, which I guess I'm quite pleased about. I will come back with some updates later, but on your specific question around mistakes, this is quite difficult for me to say, to be honest with you, because I've been thinking about these two things for a long time, and specifically if I could rather talk about them on the program. And I guess because there is some level of embarrassment involved in this, and quite difficult. And it does relate to the role that I'm in now and all the things that have transpired over the last 3-4 years of intense bullying, racist bullying and victimization. And I guess the first one is the regret that I didn't leave this job, because it has taken its toll on me. And, you know, no job is worth the abuse. And I think in part because I've probably experienced some form of harassment in every single job that I've ever had. And you just deal with things, and you know, things then settle down, or other people leave, or you know, sometimes things shift in an organization, and so things can get to a level where no job is ever perfect, but definitely bearable. But I guess the way in which the bullying and harassment was done was in many ways so personal, and actually the pack mentality, the Voltron effect, and the systematic way in which this has been done, I think I just never experienced anything like that. And I think I should have left the organisation sooner, because, as I said, it's just not worth it. And then the other thing is related to this. I think I've mentioned in the past that my daughter is very good at getting mentors, and I guess a number of her mentors are actually suspected racists, but those relationships are very beneficial for her. So she's very codified anyway in the way that she operates, and she's young, so I do think, not that racists aren't racist to young people, but I do think that the way in which young people who are willing to mentor, and I know the firefighter has certainly mentioned not using that word, but for the benefit of this conversation, willing to mentor young people, the mindset is slightly different to if, you know, they're dealing with other non-white people. So they can, as has been said many times, they can be nice sometimes and then still terrorize other non-white people. So those relationships, particularly the level of these individuals, have been extremely beneficial for her. And so at the height of the bullying, I had thought, okay, let me see if I can get a mentor in the workplace where I am, and specifically somebody who had worked in the organisation that I've worked in for a long time, and she, for whatever reason, I didn't think, because of the nature of her job and mine, I was very naive, and I didn't expect her to know my head of team. And so so basically it was a poor choice, because we were based on the same floor, and there was a time where my head of team and I were by the lift, and this suspected racist mentor was also by the lift, and I saw them just look at each other, and it was just a quick you know, sort of, they caught each other's eye, didn't say anything, and I realized, oh my goodness, those two people know each other, and they've probably been discussing me. And so I never ever had another meeting with that mentor ever again. And it was very naive, but I think because, going back to what I'd said already, the effect of all of the bullying made me kind of be, I don't know, I didn't think things through in a way which probably I wouldn't have made that mistake before. Even within the workplace, even if I'd approached this woman to be a mentor for me, I probably would have been very codified in how I used that relationship. So basically not confiding in her about things that are to do with bullying and harassment. I would have used it very, very, as we've said, to try and progress and get them to reveal things that are going to be beneficial to help progress in the organisation, and not to discuss other race soldiers. But I'll mute my line there, Gus.
Much obliged for sharing. I know the, shame factor, that is major. I know a lot of people, Black people, victims of racism, do not want to talk about these issues or how we get abused in the job or otherwise, just because it's not fun. It can be embarrassing to talk about, but number one, none of us victims should feel embarrassed about it. It's white people doing what they do, generally just terrorizing us in the job. And I think too, it's where I'll speak for myself. For me, it tends to be a lot less embarrassing once you realize, like, oh, this sort of thing is happening like all over the world. Like this, as I said previously, this is just what white people do. It's not individually about anything that you did wrong, or, you could have handled it brilliantly. White people practice racism. Whites being white, codified software developer, whites being white. So, but it's human. It's understandable. Feeling that way is certainly not pleasant. It is not a feel-good moment, as they say, thinking about how we have been terrorized on the job and elsewhere. But I did think, and that's what I said, I think it can be very informative. I did think it was super important what you shared, Stacey, about how you said you did not think it through critically, clearly, as well as you would have if it hadn't been for the bullying. And I think that happens to a lot of us. That's the impact of being terrorized, where you're being abused on a regular basis and people just picking after you and picking after you and picking after you. And that stress, it's debilitating. You're not able to think. Sometimes they're interrupting you while you're trying to think. But it's, in my view, it's by design. That is what it is designed to do. When they come and they do these things, all the accumulation of incidents that people talk about, being people coming up and trying to frighten them on the job and moving your desk, all of these disruptions, that's what it's designed to do. So you cannot perform at your best. You can't think at your best. You can't respond at your best, keeping us off balance. That's what they do in the system. And I thought it was equally, I said my list, I could have taken up the whole 3 hours easily by myself. Staying in positions that are really unhealthy and really toxic. Not that there's going to be like a perfect work environment. None of us, it's not possible in a system of white supremacy, but some environments are worse than others. That's been my conclusion. Some environments, at least you can rely on your check being correct 99% of the time, whereas other environments, that alone, some environments, man, might have to fight off being sexually harassed 2 out of 5 days this week. There are other environments where, at least you don't have to deal with all of that. That's what I mean. Racism, white supremacy will be there, but some of these environments are way worse, or just period. Some of these environments are not for us. This is not a place that we need to stay. And I think because of what was already stated, not thinking clearly, sometimes another impact of that can be we end up staying in environments way too long. We end up being someplace that was supposed to be temporary. This wasn't a career move to begin with. And instead of being there for a short period of time, a brief period of time, and then moving along 5 years have passed, and or 3 years have passed, and it's whoa, what is going on? Dr. Welsing moment again. Question: what is going on? What am I doing? What am I doing with my time and energy? That is a major question we should be asking ourselves all the time. What am I doing with my time and energy? Much obliged, Stacy. Double entendre on that one. Much obliged. Wish list as well. Other folks who dialed in with a hand up, if you have commentary to share. And again, this is definitely not the spectator broadcast. Put down that sweet potato pie. Everybody here should have at least one error. I am certain we do not have a bunch of 15-year-olds and 14-year-olds who do not have any work history. So others who dialed in with a hand up, proceed.
Can I be heard?
Draftomania, yes, ma'am.
Hi, hi, Gus and guest. Thank you, Stacy, for sharing. I can definitely identify with the. Well, I guess most of us can identify with being harassed. I am currently in a position, and it's temporary, and unfortunately, it's with a bunch of confused victims, and it has been it's been really horrendous. The behaviors that has been going on this position. I have been confronted by a victim who is also a temp like I am, and basically have been confronted. He was drunk and was accusing me of not doing my job, and I basically had to deal with some harassment. This was it Wednesday. He came in Wednesday to work. Because the first time when he did the actual harassment while he was intoxicated coming to the job and trying to make accusations and gaslighting and saying we wasn't doing our jobs correctly and things like that, which actually is not his place to do because he's a temp like I am. But for some reason, he has this complex where he thinks he's the boss or somebody's putting him up to doing whatever he's doing. He came in this Wednesday, and as soon as he came through the door, he started barking out, basically barking out orders, saying, trying to constantly make accusations that I'm not doing my job correctly, gaslighting me when I'm, trying to explain. And I guess this is one of the things that I see that is wrong, trying to explain something to individuals that are basically trying to bait you into an argument. And having the knowledge that I have now, knowing that some individuals are not really trying to understand what you're trying to say. Everything that you're going to say to them, they're just going to use that as ammo to try to make an argument. So I was basically just trying to explain to him what it is that we did, and he was like, "No, y'all didn't do this," and just basically just trying to start an argument. And there was some words said, and I basically I said some things back to him, but wasn't as well. No, I'm not gonna say I wasn't. I basically had to what's the word I'm looking for? I had to basically advocate for myself because it's starting to get to a point where this individual is really, and it's a guy. He's really off the chain, or really off the handle, or whatever. I don't even know what word to use. Not being professional without using a metaphor. That's the word I'm looking for. Not being very professional, acting very very unprofessional, in the job setting, loud, working off the orders. And I had to, let him know. He was doing some gaslighting, trying to make us appear as if we're not doing our job to other coworkers, just bad mouthing us. Everything we do, there's something wrong with everything we do. So what I ended up doing is I went to there was a supervisor there that I ended up telling him about it, because when he initially did this the first time, I did go to a supervisor, but this place is like so toxic that all of the victims there and the supervisor, I even went to the temporary agency to discuss the other manager about how this manager discusses the other workers. All they do is like constantly gossip, talk about each other. It's the anti-blackness, the gossiping, just bad mouthing each other. This one coming to you talking about what this person is not doing, and it seems like it's somewhat like a game. Like they're coming to you, telling you something just to see if you trying to bait you to see if you're going to say something so they can get some stuff started. It's just constant, just drama. And I handled it pretty well, because I did go to a supervisor, and he did come back a couple more times and try to start an argument again. But what I didn't respond to him. I just kind of walked away. But like Stacy said, when somebody is constantly harassing you, and they're constantly coming at you, and it's starting to become a habit, it is hard. But it's hard for you not to, react or respond. But I can say that I haven't responded or reacted in a way that I usually would react, but I did have to let him know, unfortunately, in a way that I really would not have done with any other person. But with this in particular individual, I had to just tell him, straight out, in a manner in which he understood, because he was just acting very, I don't know, like I'm trying not to, say something that's not correct, but very niggardly, in the position, acting very street, acting, I mean, just the stuff that goes on in there, it's just like, wow. And it's sad when it's us, doing it to each other, but it's to be expected. I understand that, but it doesn't make it any easier. But I still understand that, these people are victims, but Gus, it's difficult. It's very difficult when you're being attacked on a constant basis by your own. And I've had situations where it's been my own, it's been them, and I still like to focus on where the root cause of the problem comes from, which is white supremacy. I understand that, and I do understand that when it's being done by the white supremacists, to me, in my opinion, it's worse, hands down. I'm not going to say that when we're doing it to each other, it's worse. No, I'm not going to say that. I say because when I've experienced it from both ends of the spectrum, and I do say that it's worse because most of the time, they know what they're doing. But the victims, the victims can be very challenging also. So I'm just trying to continue to just keep my cool and deal with things in a professional manner, and just learn the best that I can, and keep my head up and keep doing what I have to do till I can get something better. Or, I don't know, Gus. I'm just trying to make it. That's all I have to share.
Understood. That is basically what the last sentence that you shared. That's generally the way that racists have designed the system to be, for us just trying to make it, and to make that as difficult and tedious as possible, and to terrorize you the whole way while you are just trying to make it. That is by racist design. This is not the compensatory call-in. However, I did want to make sure that I took this moment, we are all still learning, myself included, this is why I say that sometimes metaphors are not the best, because when you were describing the behavior of your coworker and it was off the chain, off the handle, and then unprofessional, that's way more specific the third time, way more specific, because I wasn't really sure the first two what, the nature of the problem was. But okay, delinquent, okay, much better. Now I have an idea of what we are talking about. Even, street hood, those are metaphors still, but better grasp. That's what I mean. Sometimes the metaphors, we don't really get as much detail in terms of really being it. We don't convey as much understanding so that the other person really, knows what it is that we are trying to say. And you recognize that, I think. That's why you took some more time, which is always brilliant. That is the mark of genius. Let me stop and make sure that I have selected.
Yeah, but that's because of you guys.
We are all still learning. We are all still learning, but words are very important. Be mindful of the metaphors. Often they are not the best. Sometimes it would be best to hang those up and select a better word that gives more description to what it is we're trying to say. That being said, we have talked about that, man, a bunch with delinquent victims on jobs. And everything that you said. Possessive adjective. Words are important. I talk about that a lot, talking about it's not my desk, it's not my office, it's not even my job. These are not my own people. I've said that particularly in the workplace. I think even that mentality going in that, it's black people, my brothers, black brother, black sister. Yes, with that right there is going to set you on the path for destruction. It could be a matter of seconds, could be a matter of days. I would tend to lean towards the former, but it's just got to be, hey, this is the system of racism, white supremacy. This is not an environment for us being cordial. That's not what we've been subjected to. We've had centuries of anti-blackness. That's all we've been subjected to. That's all we know in some respects is conflict and, putting down another black person and ridiculing another black person and talking bad about another black. That's all that's on television, and we rejoice in that and, make contests about that. So that's just, being honest about what white people have done to us. You're correct. That's, white people are to blame, but that doesn't do anything about I got to be with these victims for the next 8 hours as they, ridicule and abuse me. Like, and that's got to go on for 40 hours a week or 30 hours a week until, man, this is not my own. That was the whole point. This is not my own. These are victims. And in that environment, I would probably have very little to say. Like, woo, that's what I did. When I lived in Atlanta, I'm not even talking from just, Gus being up in Seattle around all the good white folks and talking crazy. I did live in Atlanta before I got here, and I worked in an all-black environment. I had very little to say, and I did not know codification at the time. That was just with trial and error, as they say, and just stumble and fumble. And after I think it took about a good 8 months of anti-blackness and ridicule before I decided the best course of action, minimize contact. I have as little to say as possible. I'm going to keep my head down. Even if they're being nasty and rude, frequently I have nothing to say. And that did wonders to minimize conflict. And I even moved a whole lot of dialogue to non-verbal communication. That also did a lot to decrease conflict, nonverbal communicate. So that would be the primary objective as long as I was there, to minimize conflict so that, I can just get through these 8 hours with as little strain as possible and hopefully don't have to get bogged down and stay in this environment too long.
Thank you, Gus.
Much obliged. Self-care, self-care, self-care. Other folks who dialed in again, if folks can reflect on their work history, times you have made an error. This is definitely something that I would not have done if I had an understanding of counter-racist logic, or I did understand it, but I just was not executing for whatever reason that day. If I had been using counter-racist logic, I would have avoided this problem. Folks have one incident to share from their work history. That would be grand. Others who dialed in with a hand up, line should be open. Proceed. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Greetings to Gus, the host, the listeners and callers. On that point, or the question about what errors that were made in the past in the workplace, I would say two of them. I could think of two. One is just the participation, like participating in the what they call food gatherings, potlucks, and the things where you're supposed to bring in refreshments and things to eat. Like I'm thinking now that I should have stopped doing that a long time ago, but I was participating, and that would be the first one. The second one, I would have to agree with the asking questions. I wasn't asking questions up until about maybe, I would say, 3 years ago. So 3 out of the 7, it was at least maybe 4 that I wasn't really being inquisitive or wanting to know things. So I would say those two would be ones that were my errors. I have a couple of reports that I like to make. The first one is there was some comments, or at least I would say it was, well, I would say I will separate them into 2 different ones because they were at 2 different times. The first was by a victim, very good worker. But I was just overhearing a conversation she was having with the departmental so-called supervisor, black female, because black people don't control anything in the system. And she was discussing her stepdaughter not having a job and not being employed. So it came to a part in the conversation where she was basically trying to say, you got to get a job, or you got to leave the residence of the house. And she went into a continuous list of things that she wouldn't mind her doing just as long as she would be employed. So she says, I don't care if you're cleaning toilets or scrubbing tables, flipping burgers. She said, heck, you can even rebuild the White House, etc. So that last one, I had to remember that because I've never heard nothing like that. And I'm thinking, I guess historically from what's been reported, black people are, I guess, were the slaves in the past at that point in time helped build the initial White House. So I found that interesting that she made that comment. The second one was the same victim was very frustrated, and this is important because I already said that I wasn't going to participate earlier this year, and she said something similar to what I've been saying because she got a phone call from my supervisor because I've been rejecting the request to participate like consistently, so she never really asked me again. So she sent an email out about people contributing $15 because we have a white woman who's about to retire on Friday after being there, I guess, 22, 23 years. So when she hung up the phone, she said, oh my gosh, if this lady asked me for $15 again, I'm going to blank, meaning she met one of the top wardens of white people. So interestingly enough, the departmental supervisor comes out of the office, black female, and she comes and sits with this other black female, and they're speaking, loud enough for me and the other white female, because there's 4 of us that work in there, so they're speaking loud enough for us to hear. So she was like, I don't know why she keep mentioning this $15, and she don't even speak to me. They don't even talk to me. They act different over here than they do over there. I was trying to piece it all together, because I want to get words accurate as to what the person was actually saying. So she obviously was displaying a point of view that she isn't treated correctly by the person who was requesting $15 of her, which is the supervisor, and she's saying the lady that's retiring don't even really communicate with her. And the supervisor says, well, would you like me to go talk to her? And I guess she said yes to that. So she was also saying, well, now, you know, with stuff like this happening, it makes me feel like I don't want to participate. So she used feel. And see, my point about this one is that I think this victim is being used to be in that supervisor position. So that if something like this occurs, they don't want her, the employee, to vocalize her concerns, how she's being treated, and her thoughts. So, because if the supervisor goes speaks with this, if the black female goes to speak with the supervisor, she could misinterpret her words. She might not state everything clearly that the other black female is saying. I think, in my opinion, the black female that has the concern should go speak with the supervisor. And that's one of the disagreements that I had with the way she does that, because I just go straight to the white person, because she's going to have to do that eventually. And my third one is that there was an email that went out about the weekly schedule. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is I noticed toward the bottom of the email, there was a list of ongoing training situations, or what she plans to have done for 4 people. And out of the 4 people, 3 of them are white women. So on the first one, it says white woman 1. That's what I'll title it. It has her name, and then it says, we want you to be learning the front counter before this other white woman goes on maternity leave. And then it has in bold italics, like text, this is the priority. And then number 2, the second white woman, we want you to learn marriage license by a certain time. And then it says in another bold, this is a goal. This is important. Black female is the third listing, has her name, and says, we want you to learn with 2 employees, and eventually you'll verify. That's all it said, but it didn't have no bold text by it. Then white woman 3, beneath her name, it says, we want you to learn scanning with such and such before she goes to the front counter. And then it has, this is very important. So I'm like, wow, they have everybody else training situations is important, or a goal or a priority, but the black person, she didn't have nothing about her name. So I asked the white person, I said, hey, could you come in for a second? You know, I said, I just the nearest white person, you know, and it was one of the people on the list. So I said, do you see this right here? And so she looking at the email with me. She said, yeah, this says that they're making it look like, she said, yeah, this is important. This is a goal, and that one not so much. What she meant is that she can see that racist. So she's about to go to the counter, and she says, she makes a statement. She says, wow, you know, I'm feeling a little bit called out there, buddy. And then she left. So whatever that meant, I had to share those couple of incidents, and that's all I have for now. Thanks for allowing me to share.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny, buddy. Now that was Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby. That was my man from the Cosby Show, Bud. The Cosby Show. Anywho, that is so paying attention to words. The question that you asked was, do you see this here? Now, I don't, I wasn't there. I'm just going off what was said. I don't remember you saying, I'm calling you out, because sometimes people say that. I'm calling you out. That what you did there is wrong. I didn't hear you say, come here. I'm calling you out. This is the courthouse, and I'm calling you out for what you did. It was just, do you see this here? And she was, yep, I see it. Didn't have any emphasis for the black employee. Everybody else, important. This is, serious. Got to get this done. Gets to the niggers. She said, you're calling me out, buddy. That right there, see, to me, is acknowledging, as you said, the racism, white supremacy, and the incorrect. Generally, when it's calling out time, someone has done something incorrect. She was acknowledging, yes, something incorrect has happened here, racism, white supremacy, and I might be culpable. And you weren't even calling out, just asking her, does she see this? Yes, she is not ignorant about racism. I also think being direct, I think retired firefighter has spoken about that before. If there's a problem or something with the situation about the $15, be direct in the workplace. And for many reasons, specifically the one that you gave about you do not want to give an opportunity for a race soldier to conveniently misquote, paraphrase you incorrectly, add in, 2 or 8 other sentences that you did not say. You want to totally eliminate room for that to happen at all. Talk to whomever needs to be addressed. Talk to them directly. Whatever white person that can solve the problem, or whatever individual, if it's a non-white person, that can get the problem solved so that you are never again nagged for $15. Bam, talk to them yourself so that you can say whatever needs to be said. Do not depend on a white messenger that is giving them an opportunity to practice racism. And even if it was a non-white person, I wouldn't want to do that because it's an opportunity they might misconstrue what you said, where it gets stated differently, or stand by your work and be willing to speak up and speak for yourself. That is like rule number 1 of counter racism. Words matter. And if you have an opportunity to select your words and speak for yourself, that is always better than having somebody else go and speak on your behalf. The $15 thing, I think I talked about that specifically last week. I think we mentioned that before. Anything where it's pitching in, if it's pitching in for lottery tickets, birthday cake, funeral services, going away party, no. And I would not have, we talked about shame before, I would not have any shame, embarrassment, humiliation, whatever sob story that you need to come up with. Oh man, I am hurting. I got to take care of my children. I got to take care of me. It's Christmas season. I got to buy 15 million presents. It's Black Friday. Man, I just don't have $15. Matter of fact, you have a couple bucks I can borrow for gas money. Whatever sob story, so that they do not ask. I wouldn't feel bad about that at all, but it would be never under any circumstances with. And that's another one, expectations, because once you do it, boop, if they see, if it's a black person and you do it, then they're going to expect. If it's a black person or somebody that you like, you can hit them up privately, even away from the office. And, if you want to take them out for lunch or dinner or get them a card or whatever, but I would not participate in any of that. So much of that, it ends up being rife with tackiness and everything else around it. I would not. And I would make that clear from the beginning. I don't have any expectation that you all are going to divvy up and, hook me up with a fried chicken dinner and watermelon on my birthday. So yeah, it's all good. No expectations. I don't participate in any of that. Courteous, cordial every day, but that's just not my thing. And let's proceed back to work. And the building the White House. Strangely, the building the White House comment reminded me of Mr. Fuller's remarks about, since the Obamas were there for those 8 years, him saying that whole thing needed to be blown up. And now Mr. Trump is there. That's what it reminds me of. Yet the niggers doing the building, of course, but that's what it reminds me of. Like, oh yeah, that whole place is in ruins, needs to be fumigated anyway. Let the niggers there. That's a project that needs to be done. Go rebuild the White House. That counts. Other folks who dialed in, much obliged. Caller in Florida. Thomas in New York. Greetings, sir.
Good evening, Gus. Greetings. Hey, Gus, did you ever get that picture? Were you ever able to look at that picture?
What was the picture? I remember we talked about this. What was the picture? Let's see if it jogs my memory. Let's see.
A white partner with his white wife.
Oh, in the dashiki. Yes, I saw it. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's the very racist top earner for the firm. And he's very proud of that picture. You have a white partner at the firm who's an older white woman, and I assume she's a lesbian, based off of the way she looked, her hairstyle, the way she dresses in real slacks, turtlenecks every day, and she referred when we had the company trip on a company boat ride. She referred to her spouse as her partner. I hate this lady. I hate, because she's not that old. She has gray hair, but she claims she can't open her mail, so every day I have to open all her mail for her, which is, just a added responsibility that, I don't, feel as though I should have to do. She got a secretary. And also, every time I go in her office, she gets startled. Like, she has to hold her heart. Like, oh my God. Like, how did I get up here? Now I knock or I start speaking to her before I enter her office, and just to keep her from being startled. If she passes me in the hallway, she acts very frightened. I almost get scared, but she's a hoarder. So she keeps everything in her office. It's a wreck. She doesn't want to throw anything out. And of course, I'm working on this project where we have to throw everything out. So I've been having to deal with her. But she has a picture of this little, of a young, shouldn't say little, a young black girl in her office. And one day I walk in and the black girl is there. And she introduces her to me as her daughter. So, I assume that she abducted this black female. But I just found out the other day that this white female is married to a black man who's pretty wealthy and well known in the New York City. I won't, say his name, but he's well known in New York politics. So I just thought that was very interesting. So that's her. Yeah, exactly. That's her daughter from marriage. Had a meeting with the CEO to explain the move. Like I said, the office is moving, and what's expected from everyone, etc. And this is solidification of who's in charge. The CEO, a white female. The owner is a white male, and he's an older white male, and his secretary is my terrorist. And she controlled the whole entire meeting, overspoke the CEO over and over again, corrected her continuously, just, reprimanded people outright in this meeting. In particular, before this meeting, I was told by the terrorist to take 5 boxes across the street to the other office, and then make those boxes into, the boxes. So let's just say the box holds 20 boxes, but they're flat. So I have to, take a few minutes to, open it up and pretty much put it together into a little box, for files and other things. So either way, when I got over there with the boxes,
on the other side, in the other office across the street, everyone's moving into one big office now, so it won't be two offices. That's where they do a lot of the billing and things like that. So the chief financial officer, she says, over here we make our own boxes, Thomas. You don't got to worry about that. For us, just, go back and do whatever you were doing, So I go back, of course, and I'm doing what is needed to be done. And the terrorist sees me. So she's, what are you doing over here? So I said, doing my job, So she said, didn't I tell you to go? I said, I bought the boxes. And the CFO told me that, they make their own boxes. Don't worry about it. Absolutely not. So she come with me. So I have to come with her. She gets on the phone. She calls up the CFO, Chief Financial Officer. Who I am in charge of what Thomas does, not you. You don't tell him what to do. I tell him what to do. I told him to make the boxes. He's coming over there to make the boxes right now. Don't you ever do that ever again. I was like, whoa. So either way, I get over there, and she's like, who does this B think she is? I tell you, Tommy, the chief financial officer is a person with squinty eyes that is called an Asian. I don't know from what Asian countries, China, Korea, Japan, one of them. So she's, very pissed off behind the way she was spoken to. And we have, in an hour, we have to go to this meeting. So as we're in the meeting, this lady is just pissed off. And she just rips into her in the meeting about billing and stuff that had nothing to do with this move. Just wanted to showed her that she was in charge. So, I just thought that was, just how she operates. So, later on, that day, I'm back over making the boxes, and she comes over to check on me. But really what she had was a whole bunch of stuff that she wanted to have taken down from a high area, and she needed me to lift it and get it to the floor so she could look through it to see if it was anything worth taking. So that's what we start doing. There's a partner, a guy who used to be a partner, but he started his own accounting firm. He has about 3 or 4 employees, and he rents office space in that other office from the owner. So he was throwing out a couple of his papers here. He has to move as well. And from what I understand, he's moving into the same office space as we are, but he's in the trash can that are allocated for recycled paper, and she sees him doing it. And as he's throwing it out, she says, "What are you doing?" So he says, "I'm throwing out paper. I've been throwing out paper all day. I have to clean out. We bought that bin. You didn't pay for that with your office. No. Take all your paper out." She stood there and made this man take all his paper out of this big bin. I could not believe it. And, this is what I deal with every day. So either way, the French lady, who's pretty much, of course, she's been working. She has no time to go around and do what she normally does. It's a lot of, all eyes is on her on this move. She's the executive secretary to the CEO. So she's been doing what she needs to do. And she yelled at the French lady. So the French lady comes whining, "Oh my God, I just can't believe she spoke to me like that. And I went to the boss, and the boss says, well, suck it up, talk to me the same way," I guess she said. So either way, she's like, but I'm not going to stand for this. And, and I told her how rotten she speaks to you. I said, "Whoa, listen, don't do that. Do not do that. This lady's been consistent since I know her. I expect her to speak to me this way. You don't have to go and say anything on my behalf. I don't want no parts of that." She says, "Oh, but no. She talks to you a certain way. You make your case for yourself. I don't have I deal with her I have to deal with her. She's the boss. I deal with her. That's just how it is. So, I nipped that in the bud. However, so later on that day, she's throwing out things, and she threw out things that she wasn't supposed to. And when the terrorist walks past, of course, I'm standing there. She accuses me of doing it. And I said, well, wait a minute now. I work for you. You know I wouldn't do that. Well, who do you think would do that? I said, hey, listen, I saw Catherine throwing things, well, I shouldn't have said the name, but saw her throwing things in the trash. Maybe you need, I knew she did it. So she went over there. I mean, you could hear it all around the office as she yelled at this French lady. And later on that day, this is the last little part, she asked me to go back across the street to throw some more things out with her. So I'm like, goodness. So I go over there, and she says, thank you for throwing Catherine under the bus. I loved it. And then we kept on working. But that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Gus.
Woo! Much obliged, Thomas in New York. What a week. That is a shrewd counter-racist move when the female employee was going to go make her case for how the white woman talks to you all, and you said, well, wait a minute, do not, amend my case as though you're going to make a grievance on my behalf. If you, want to go deal with your situation and how she talks to you, then, that's fine. But do not lump my case in as though, and I got Thomas's back too. Like, I got it. I have to deal with her, and I'm already, figuring out the best way to deal with her. I think that is a very shrewd move, in my opinion, because that could have had repercussions with whites. I'm not surprised the antics of even, in fact, I just wanted to pause, given what we just heard. Either Me Too has been, way more successful than we think, or the notion of weak white women who are darn near in the same position as niggers is astronomically false. These white women do not sound marginalized victims of toxic masculinity. They sound like they are wielding that same authority on the plantation that Dr. Curry talks about in The Man Not, which is, in my experience, in the workplace for my entire life. White women act like they own and run the joint. But I'm not surprised at her antics in terrorizing this Asian female. It sounded like non-white female. Over what you were doing. You're not going to tell my nigger what to do. I tell him what to do. Who do you think you are, usurping my authority over how the niggers on the plantation are going to be used and what they're doing? The moving, things getting, I guess, moved and you going to be blamed. I don't think that's throwing anyone under the bus. I guess that's what the white woman said. I think that's just being correct. If there's an allegation, hey, I do what I'm told. You can investigate. There are other folks here that you can investigate. That might be one, too. I think Mr. Williams has said it at times. That's one where, hey, this white person, if you don't already know who did it, you have much more authority than me. You can find this out without my help. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not saying you did anything incorrect, but that's just an opportunity, because sometimes they do like to do that. They'll put it back on you and say, "Oh yeah, Thomas, he was the one who pointed out that you didn't do this," or that sort of thing, where they can put it off and say that, "Oh yeah, it was a black person who pointed you out, ratted you out to us to let us know that you were the one that messed this up," to try to sidestep that at times. But great work. Sorry you had to deal with the abuse and the moving and all of that, to be expected. Try and minimize as best you can in dealing with the white woman, and hopefully the race soldier who likes to do all the petting and fondling and disrobing, you can keep her at a great distance. Maybe they'll fire her since she was messing up the filing and throwing out stuff that she wasn't supposed to. Maybe they'll terminate her, and that'll one problem solved, one less racist to deal with. Let's see. Other folks who dialed in, if you have commentary, still looking for errors, moments in your work history where if you had practiced counter racism, things would have been better, and or if you had been more informed about counter racism, you could have made better decisions. Others who dialed in with a hand up, line should be open.
May I be heard?
Was there a female caller? Princess, are you with us?
If there was a female caller, by all means.
Oh, okay.
Are you there, ma'am? We heard you.
Oh, okay. Yes, this is Princess. I would say, as far as you asked if there were any mistakes we may have made. Okay.
Correct.
Oh, okay. I would say in the beginning, not with my job currently, although I'm on leave, but past a few times, I know definitely when I was at Comcast, and that was before I knew anything about the show and stuff like that. My biggest mistake there, looking back now, was being an advocate for everybody. You know, everybody would come to me with their problems, and they knew I would speak out in meetings about certain things, and you know, didn't have a problem in voicing my opinion on stuff or challenging someone on policy. And, you know, although I would be right per se because it would affect me, a lot of times things that were happening to other people, that was just based on their performance, because I never had an issue with performance at Comcast. They solely came after me primarily, other than the issue with my then branch manager. But as far as performance, no, they couldn't get me on anything like that. And looking back now and what I've been doing since, like, if it's not pertaining to me, I'm not going in the office. I'm not calling corporate or advocating for what may have happened, a grievance that may have happened to somebody else. They got to fight their own fight. I'm only concerned with what's happening with me, and if I include somebody in something, it's because they're helping build my case, or if they're willing to speak on something. Same thing like with the situation that I have as far as with my tires being slashed. Everybody, like I said, they said, you know, if you need me to speak on this, or you're just going out of my way because somebody says, well, this person said this to me and I don't know what to do, and you can, you think you could say something to them because they'll listen to you. I don't do that no more. But as far as currently, I had called last week, update on my workplace situation. I've been out from my current position on FMLA. I had put in the paperwork a month ago, and I just happened to call last week because I wanted to make sure that my information had been submitted and everything was good and ready, so that way I can get paid. And lo and behold, they had indicated, and of course this is after I had already left Florida. For that, they said because I had included in my paperwork that I was going to be overseeing my dad's company, that they didn't want to approve the FMLA. And so but I didn't get the notification or anything because I'm up here. They sent it in the mail on the 4th of November. And I'm like, well, they could have told me that before I left the state. I was there almost a week and a half, with the store manager. They could have easily told me that because I had to submit the paperwork physically to them. And so they knew this. So they was talking about having all this I have to do, whatever. So I've been playing phone tag and with corporate and stuff because I had received a text from my store manager basically saying, I can read it right now because he sent the exact same one today, and my dad just told me not to respond to him, just keep responding to corporate. And from this point on, if anybody needs to ask him anything, because, I mean, he hasn't told me the full extent of medically what's going on with him, but he did mention to me that I guess he had some type of reaction to after the treatments and stuff, so he's just been physically weak and tired. So, like he said, again, it's the nature of the work that he does. If it's not a necessity for you to know something, he will not tell you. So, until I spoke to him last night, like I told him, I said I was just trying to be as transparent with them as possible so that way they didn't think that this was a joke or anything, but he just told me it's just letting people know certain information. People don't need to know certain things. That's all. So my store manager had texted me. He basically was asking me what's the status on my employment and have I found a transfer, a store that I can transfer to, and if I'm leaving the company. Now, when I met with him when I returned back to Florida on the 19th, when I first came up here to visit my father, I have a recorded conversation with him about this, 2 of them actually. And so he already knows what the situation is. And so this was his first time reaching out to me about this. But yet he already knows that we've already discussed this. He knows it's in my paperwork, what I've requested. He already knows what he's done with my performance review. So you're blocking me from getting a transfer because you wrote a poor performance review on me after I had to get corporate and stuff involved. So it's just like, these games that they're playing and stuff. And I don't know, like lately I've just been like, I just feel like I want to walk away from this because, like I said, I already got my job lined up for another company here. But I'm mainly here, like I said, because I'm studying right now to do my certifications in order to help my dad out. So that way I will be able to handle the stuff in the office, as far as with the government. So that's just been the main priority. I mean, even if whatever I have lined up for me in the next month falls through, that's not really per se a concern of mine. It's mainly trying to make sure that I get my certifications and stuff, so that way come February when this contract that they're trying to bid on comes through, the company's good. So that's the main reason why I had to be here and be in place. But I'm just like frustrated at this point because it just seems like it doesn't even matter, even if you cross your T's, dot your I's, they will still find a way to, excuse my language, fuck with you. And I've just absolutely had it to the point, like I said, all this came about, when my uncle got killed. My mom's going through all this stuff, and my dad's sick, and it was just a lot of stuff going on, and I'm just tired of just fighting. And I thought that, hey, they don't want me there, I don't want to be there. This is a win-win for everybody. and they just still find a chance to just want to fuck with you, and it's just crazy. But and as far as white females, I would just say that is something I feel that we definitely need to pay more focus on. I know we focus a lot on the white male, of course, but white females, they're something to be reckoned with because they like to do a lot of sneaky stuff behind the scenes. And I'll mute my line.
Deception primary weapon in the system of racism, white supremacy. Lots of sneakiness and backbiting, as they call it, in the workplace. I say that on a regular basis. The conversations that they have when we are not present, I mean, they abound. Frequently talking about us when we are not present. In terms of advocating for others, counter racism, absolutely, army of one. I mean, that's admirable. I think we have had a good number of people who have tried to help out other black people that they work with or other non-white people that they work with. But generally speaking, counter racism is going to be an individual effort. And then same thing that I just said, be direct. I have the problem. I will be the one to speak to, not, I have the problem and, let me go get Miss Johnson or, Mr. Rogers to go and speak on my behalf. That's not the way that counter racism is supposed to work. So certainly with others, if they want a thought or two and you trust them, that's fine, but it would be encouraging them. If this is a problem for you, then you should talk to such and such and such and such, and perhaps ask this question to see if you can help get this problem resolved. But yeah, I think that's intelligent decision for you to make, to not be the resident advocate on behalf of all of the aggrieved victims of racism with a problem in the workplace. Number one priority, best wishes to your father. I hope he recuperates quickly and can get his health back quickly. I guess with the FMLA, for those of us in the future, that might be something to be alert about in terms of whatever information that you give to them. If you're going to help out another family member or what have you, to maybe not include any information that makes it seem like you are going to be working or doing something in a capacity that, like, oh, you could be working, you could be using your time and energy here with us as opposed to whatever else you're going to be doing. That might be a lesson I guess the rest of us can take forward about what information to include or what to omit when filing for FMLA. I would not be surprised if they wasted your time and energy in terms of when they told you about the decision. It's been my experience that does happen deliberately a lot of times, so we don't get information in the most timely manner, or they'll make it cumbersome where they could have told you that information earlier and then they waited until way down the line, even though the decision had probably already been made. That sort of thing, standard operating procedure, just the general tackiness. And same thing, I think a lot of folks talked about just getting frustrated and worn down about everything. I think it's phenomenal that you already have something lined up, another job opportunity lined up. So it's not like everything is hinging on this. I can feel your frustration about this and just trying to work your plan. If you can salvage things and kind of work through it until you're ready to transition to something better, that's great. But it certainly, I know that the incidents, the car slashing and racist comments from folks who work there saying nigger while they work, I mean, it's been a lot of terrorism to deal with on the job, and that has a corrosive impact on our health to be in that sort of toxic environment for a long time, and just dealing with that every day, ongoing abuse. Other folks, number again, 641-715-3269. 3640. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Is it true that we don't have any folks who on their job it's a stated part of the rules and regulations there can be no quote unquote dating, no romantic activity between employees? Nobody has that as a part of their policy and procedure, or at least no one that we're hearing from currently.
May I be heard?
Yes, sir.
We have that in our policy book.
Oh, we did get one, Princess. You said you got that in your policy book. It's Do you recall the language that they use specifically? Does it say no dating or no, do you remember the language? If you don't, that's fine too.
I can't remember the terminology they use. I do think they make some type of exceptions, like you could work, if you do happen to work at the same store, it can't be in a same position. Like if you're in a leadership role or if you're in pharmacy or something like that. If you're just a regular team member, then basically you could work in the same store, but you have to have a completely separate shift. You got to, if the person works at 7 a.m. to 3, the other person has to be coming in at from 3 to close or something like that. They can never be on a same set shift during the day. But as far as for members of management, you can't work at the same store, same level. You'll have to work at a completely different store.
Counter-racist codification. They know that sex thing. As I said, people frequently, emotions can get the best of them. Much obliged, Princess. The male caller who yielded to Princess to begin with. Much obliged, sir. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Gus. And again, greetings to the callers and listeners. Thank you, Gus, again for the platform. I've just recently trying to make strategic moves in my on my plantation that I'm working at. The difficult thing about it is my manager currently has been moving to undermine me at different points and junctions. And I say this in regards to the company has been downsizing, so it has been laying off tremendous amounts of people. So in the process, what I've been doing, instead of worrying about being laid off or anything of that nature, I've been looking to move into another department which would be more secure and more stable. The department I looked into is actually reached back out to me and asked me to do a project for them. I then proceeded to tell them that I would like to work with them, obviously, and then forwarded the information to my manager, who is a non-white male, but he would be classified, he classifies himself as Dominican, but physically, if you see him, you wouldn't be able to tell. He could pass for quote unquote so-called white. So he functions as a white male, and it's almost, I don't know if anybody else has been experienced this, but it's almost worse in these scenarios where you deal with somebody who can pass as white. They tend to be more vigilant and more devious in their actions towards other non-whites, and just to show that that they're not actually showing any favoritism. So basically what's happened is when I forward him the information in regards to the group that is willing to work with me and has a project for me, he never responded. I've reached back out 2 days later. He then informed me that the project that they came to me with, he forwarded it to another group of people within our team without having a conversation with me, without any information. So I did the next corresponding thing, which is reach out to the more higher and powerful white, which is the director. I met with the director on one occasion first, and he reciprocated and wanted to see me advance, wanted to see more things transpire. And unfortunately, this Tuesday, when I met with him a second time, he stated to me that he met with my manager, and my manager stated that I am not performing up to par, and gave a long, at least 8-point list of things that I was not doing properly. I was shocked and a little bit appalled at the fact that my manager did this, because I'm aware that he has no quote unquote respect for me. He could have, if he wanted to, I just don't understand. I'm a little confused on it a little bit, but I thought that if you don't want me in the group and I'm looking to move out of the group, that he would let me move out of the group. But instead, he undermined me with the director, and now the director is having second thoughts about advancing me and moving me in the proper direction. So what I did entail via email, I asked the director to give me the list of all the things that the manager stated that I wasn't doing appropriately. I'm going to have a meeting with my manager next week, Wednesday, where I sit down and go over all the things on the list. Only one of these things is somewhat significant out of 8. All the rest of them I could easily combat by via email and verification from other clients that I deal with. So my thought is that this may lead to a situation where, from what I'm seeing, that I may be written up, where he is working with another white male on my team to undermine me. And if I get written up again, I'm still going to do what I'm doing as far as paperwork and documenting everything and make sure I put everything to HR. But also, I will hedge my bets and look for other work. And in the process, work with the group that, and this is one of the keys to this, when my manager gave the job away to the other gentleman within my group, it was incomplete. The group that reached out to me and asked me to work with them then came back to me and stated this work was done improperly. Please have your manager or you yourself do this again, which is extremely great. But the problem that I'm having is, should I take this email that was forwarded to me and forward it to my director and state that my manager did not put me on this job and it's not complete properly, and the group is asking for me to do it specifically? Or should I fall back and pass it to my manager and use that as ammunition for a later HR meeting? And that's kind of my question. I hope I was clear and concise with that, but that's where I'm having an issue. And either way, as a second note, I am still going to be looking for other work outside of the company, because I see the energy that I'm putting into just transferring out of my group as so much that it might be best for me to look outside of the whole entire company, and that might be the best solution, because working with a manager that doesn't like you is just not productive. It's just not going to work. Later on, either later or sooner, he'll eventually undermine me or try to basically cut me under. Again, that being said, I'll mute my line, and thank you for the platform.
Much obliged, sir. Be interesting to hear from other listeners as well about the best course of action in terms of, do you forward your documentation, do you forward it to the director or to your immediate supervisor for HR consultation? I guess with the overall of what you shared in terms of being undermined and, making sure to update your resume so that you can, be in position to move along if need be to find a better plantation. I think that's always wise for all of us. particularly given what you kind of concluded with about the circumstances working with a direct manager who seems to be directly hostile to you and is looking to sabotage your efforts. And I don't think any of us should be shocked or surprised about that. Anyone classified as white, where it's, if you don't want me here and I can move along, it's not just, oh, okay, well, I'll allow you to move along. It's, oh, no, no, no. I'm going to try and sabotage you as you're trying to move out. That's generally how whites function. They derive pleasure in just watching us have difficulty and struggle. That is, their existence. I think, at least my view, and like I said, this is one I'd be curious to hear from other folks. It might be that you could send the information to both the director and your immediate supervisor. That way, the director, if the more powerful white person who has the ability to move you to a better location within the company, he can see the documentation to see, that they wanted you specifically to do whatever the task is. And then your immediate supervisor as well, for the human resource consultation, like you said, because that could be for two different purposes. That way he can see that you're competent, since he's trying to sabotage you and make it look like you are another defective Negro who shouldn't have been hired to begin with. So you have your information to refute that with him. And then with your direct supervisor, if you are going to be staying there, to at least address some of these immediate problems. False allegations, I say that all the time. That is something serious, where if things are being done in an incorrect manner, and particularly if there being charges made that you're not doing your job correctly, if you have information to refute that, then you can get that addressed there as well. So maybe both would be an option. What do folks think about sharing the information? Would you just take it directly to the director? Just take it to the supervisor? Both? None of the above? What do folks think about that? Heard both of you. We'll nab Stacy and then Princess. Stacy in London.
Yeah, thanks, Gus, and thanks to Princess. Just quickly, I have been in a position, and I spoke about it probably a while ago maybe back in 2016 on the cows. I was in a similar position in that I was interviewed for a position. My manager at the time was undermining me, wasn't renewing my temporary contract, or she was stalling. And in the meanwhile, I'd gone and been interviewed for a role, and it was a two-stage process. So the director of the new team was giving me feedback, and she basically said, you've had a really flawless interview. However, I've heard some negative things about you, and proceeded to tell me what my manager said. And I was stunned, and I had to give, she was giving me an opportunity to respond. So I said what I needed to say. And needless to say, I was appointed to the role. So in terms of the director who is in the new team that you mentioned, they could hear what was being said, or they could use their own judgment and move you onto the project if they really wanted to. So I wouldn't necessarily forward the email to your current line manager and the new director. What I would do is email the team and say, you're more than willing to help, but you were not appointed, or sorry, you weren't allocated to the project. So basically request that, demonstrate that you're still willing to help, but ask them to, look at talking to, your new director or whatever, put it back in their hands, basically. And then continue to follow up with HR and all the rest of it. I'll mute my line, Gus. I do have an update, but when everybody else has contributed.
Interesting strategy, Stacy. Like that. Princess, did you have commentary?
Yeah, I was gonna initially say that he should copy both the director am the manager, but his immediate manager, but only because he had stated that it was his direct manager that had gotten the director in on, going over his performance and stuff. It's kind of similar to my situation where the new DM, the incoming DM, basically she picked up where the other DM left off, and they kind of, briefed her on me per se. I never met her or anything, but she was basically picking up where the other DM left off and was going off of whatever they've already been told. So I would say I would just keep it contained to the direct manager, so that way at the end of the day, if anything goes down, it will fall on him mainly, because he's the one writing the performance, and so then you can just go at him directly, point by point on what's incorrect on it. Because it sounds like they've already had their meeting or talked about the situation, behind closed doors. It almost sounds like they've already had their email correspondence going about him possibly moving over to a different department. He's trying to make it seem like, oh no, he's incompetent, this, that, and other. He won't be a good fit there. So they wanted to have this meeting with him, because normally, like for us, if they meet with you or something like that, they have to have two people present with you. Now, that's not for you. That's for them, so that way they have their witness and, I guess for legal matters. But I would say to just go directly to the manager, because to get him involved, the director, he's just going to be an outside spectator, and again, he's already going to side with the manager. So if you can get the manager to concede to some of the incorrect information on the performance review, then send the information over to the director, because all he really wants to know is whether or not you can do the job. He'll sign off on whatever, but he's getting the okay from his manager. So that's how I look at it. I could be wrong.
Well, the thing is that my manager is the one that's mainly undermining me. My immediate manager has no. He basically at this point is trying to make sure that not only do I have no way of getting out of the group, but I'm also viewed as a person that is non-productive in the group. The way that I'm going to counter this is the fact that the things that he brought forth to my manager have never been brought forth to me. They shouldn't have been escalated to my director if they were never brought to me. So henceforth, how am I supposed to know?
Do you guys have like mid-year reviews? Like they have a year review, then they have a mid-year review.
Correct.
Do you guys
correct.
have that, or is it just once a year?
We have mid-year reviews as well. The thing is that it's passed already. So
No, I'm saying, so in that mid-year review, he never mentioned anything.
Nope.
About any of these things on this list from your review that you just
Nope.
released Tuesday, correct?
Okay, not at all.
That's basically what happened to me, because I had my mid-year review in April, and this was the day that I had this exchange with this person who slashed my tires. So after we had this huge meeting, I go and do my mid-year review. He's like, everything's great. I have it in writing, all this stuff. And so after this whole hoopla happened, now, I'm on the naughty list. So if you got any type of documentation from your mid-year review, or you just make a note of it, hey, how come you can ask them, well, where was this all presented at in my mid-year review? Because this is just new to me now. So, but yeah, I'll let you finish.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm going to be shooting for. I already scheduled a meeting with my immediate manager to address these things and say, out of these 8 things on the list, there's maybe one that's really sufficient, and that's one that's really actually true. Everything else is just falsified and exaggerated. And added on to that, why are you bringing this up to the director instead of bringing it up to me if you had a serious issue with it? And that's where, via email, I'm going to send the email first, documenting that, so that when the time comes, because he's going to take me to HR, I'm pretty sure of it. He's not that smart. So at that point in junction, when I have that documented with HR, that when we sit down and have that HR discussion, that will be one of my first points, is that he never really put this on the table as an issue. He then put it on the table after he passed me over for the project, which is another stripe against him. Sorry for the analogy, but another mark against him, because a proper manager would actually tell me, I'm not going to put you on this project because you have X, Y, and Z as an issue. Handle those things first, then I'll put you on the project. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's where I'm trying to come from. I'm trying to build up my case, because I think that he's operating off of what the other so-called whites on my team are deeming me, which is, and I find this is really interesting. This goes back to the Man Not book reading with Dr. Curry, which is one of the two of the workers in my group, both of them Russian. And I said to one of the Russian guys in my office, he's in my direct room, I said to him, the other Russian guy on our team always makes sexual remarks about me and other women in the office. And he said to me, as a reply, he goes, that's weird, a man making sexual remarks about your sexual, vibe or feeling. And then he goes, at a later time during the same day, he goes, it's interesting. I got to tell you, all those guys over there in the other group that are white that have an issue with you, and you're a 6'1" black man with 180 pounds, 6'1" black male, and they all have an issue with you. Isn't that odd? And I didn't catch it when he said it. And I said, wait a minute. After, literally when I went home, I didn't even have time to process this because I'm in the middle of work and all the other things that are hectic in New York City. But I processed it on the way home. He told me, and this on multiple levels was really interesting, is that the fact that he assessed my size, he assessed my weight, and then correlated it with the fact that the white men in the other group, and within my group, have an issue with me physically and sexually. I kind of was like, whoa. He said so much in that one statement, and I don't even think he realized it. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But I thought it was just so much, and I had to really put things into context, and that's why I say that I'm hedging my bets. I'll do my paperwork and make sure that when HR comes, I'll have everything set. But I'll also look for another job, because I just don't see myself working within the group because of that dynamic right there. That's enough to get me fired as it is.
If anyone is ignorant about racism, it's black people.
Great point of emphasis. Long time since I've included that sound clip. I always think it's best to assume that the white person, male, female, infant, they are not ignorant about racism. And I'm sure he was very aware of what he was saying, why he was saying it. No, it is not shocking at all that they would have a problem with a larger black male. Not shocking at all. Did any other folks want to give a thought on the yay, nay about sharing the information? Just double checking. I know Princess might have had another comment, but just any of the other folks who dialed in, did you all want to give a suggestion on whether or not you would share the report with the director, line manager, whatever, how you would try to deal with that? I assume folks are good on that one. I think we did have other folks who had not shared yet, so let's see. I guess, Princess, if you can get if you had one more thing you were going to share with our male caller that you can get in like 30 seconds, then we'll see if we can get our other callers also.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Great. Let's see. Other folks who dialed in, did we miss anyone with a hand up that we have missed totally thus far?
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am. Codified software developer.
Hi, good evening, Gus. Good evening to all the callers and listeners on the line. A few things. I got in here a little bit late, and I heard Princess talking about the FMLA, and it reminded me of a situation I had when I was working for Milwaukee Public Schools, and I was in school full time, and I had gotten an internship because it was necessary for me to get an internship in order to get a job in development. And I asked for a leave of absence, and I was told we had a union, or the MPS had a union for their secretaries, and that's what I was working as at that time. And I was told by the head of the union that that she had heard I had another job, and so I wasn't eligible for a leave of absence. Now, the head secretary at school I was working at was a white female. They were really close. So I guess this white female told her that. And, I spoke about it with my mother, and my mother said, well, you can stay with me and you don't have to pay rent, or just quit the job and get a better job, which I ended up doing. And I was very blessed and fortunate to have my mother with me at that time. But as soon as I turned in the 2-week notice, the white female that head of the union came back and said, I just wanted to let you know your leave of absence came through. And I was like, wow, okay. So they really like to F with you, as you said, Princess. And that was very deliberate what she did. And I'm pretty sure that's very deliberate what they're doing at your place of employment as well. In terms of J and NYC, I do think that you should probably forward that to your manager and to your director just for documentation. But I also like Stacy's idea about forwarding it to the team as well, and perhaps actually forwarding it to the team and asking and letting people know that you're willing to be able to help, and then courtesy copying the director and the manager. So there's some documentation of your willingness to be a team player, quote unquote. I also think that, you should probably start looking for new employment. I think that manager is really targeting you, and I don't think that. It's either going to turn out to be you either resign because you've gotten a new job, or you get fired because this, and I'm just going to say this race soldier, because at this point I do believe he's acting as a white person. He is definitely acting as a white person. This race soldier is going to do something that will inevitably lead to your termination. So I would recommend looking for a new plantation. As far as a quick anecdote from me, I had a meeting with the lead architect on Monday. It was several people. We were talking about vacation, and he asked me, because at the company I work at, when you get to 5 years, you're fully vested and you get 5 weeks of vacation. And he asked me, did I have 5 years yet? And I said, no, it'll be 5 years next year if I don't get fired first. And he said, oh, well, you know, I'll work on any project with you at any time. And I said, oh, that's so sweet. And he kind of said, you know, because I was being sarcastic. Anyway, so he then said, you know, or at any company. So I thought that was interesting. I was a little taken aback by that. But I thought it was interesting. I filed it away. So I was outside, and he was walking to get his lunch. And he comes over to me. He says hello, and I say hello. And he comes over to me. He starts talking about how he doesn't know what company he's working for anymore. And, the company has had this loyalty for him for 23 years, and he's had loyalty to this company. And now he doesn't have the same loyalty, and he doesn't know what he's going to do. And I was just like, oh, okay, well, that's what it is. That's the real world, And it seemed like he was fishing for something. And I thought it was interesting. I'm thinking about it. I wish I would have recorded it, because I think that he was fishing for something. I think either he's trying to move around and open his own company, he's starting to try to poach talent, or he's trying to see what I'm interested in doing, or both. So I'm going to see how that shapes up. Other than that, I don't have any more updates. Thank you for allowing me to share.
They are manipulative. I think Princess mentioned that earlier as well. The sneakiness, poaching talent, just trying to keep tabs on the niggers, sharing info. The surveillance takes a lot of different forms at times. Incidentally, with the suggestions that were still being handed out, I liked Codified Software Developers' suggestions for a male caller as well. When they come with the way that they did the attack on him, in he's trying to move to a new team, and then his supervisor says, oh, this is the most incompetent nigger we ever hired here. Got my list of 8 things that he's messed up this morning. That's why it's so important, those either the mid-year reviews or wherever, performance evaluations. It's so important because that's where all of that should be addressed if there are any problems. If that didn't come up there, then what's the deal? What's even on that review? Let's get a copy of that to see what it said there. And we've had so many listeners over the years who said they end up not doing those reviews, end up being late with those reviews, and that can end up, just being real problems for you, not for them. Them not doing those reviews in a timely manner, not doing them at all. Sometimes we've had some calls with that. Where it can just cause more and more problems. Really take that seriously and really get on them. That's when you definitely want an electronic paper trail of where is my performance evaluation, where is my review. This is really important to make sure that if there are any problems, they can be addressed, that I have an opportunity to correct and enhance my performance, as they say. Very, very important strategically. I think that's why a lot of times whites avoid or just don't make a timely effort to do those reviews with non-white people, particularly black people. Other folks dialed in have commentary. Is Princess the only one who works in a workplace where they have, and it's an explicit part of policy, no hanky-panky among employees? She the only one?
Oh, Gus, can I answer that question? I'm sorry, I meant to answer that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Real quick, no, the policy and procedure does not have that, and in fact, I know of at least 5 people who have stated that they've dated people in the company, and there are a few people who have married people in the company. Ironically, though, you cannot have a family member come to the company and be employed. So if you're working there, none of your family members can apply. They'll get immediately rejected. But you can date and marry people in the company.
Wow. Fascinating. The policies and procedures that can be concocted in the workplace. Stacy, did you have commentary on that one?
Oh no, sorry, I was going to give an update. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Unless any other folks, we miss anybody else? The sex policies in the workplace. That must be an unpopular one. Have to inquire about that again down the road. Did you want to give your update, Stacy?
Yeah. Okay. I mentioned last week that I have had a problem with my hand. It's basically repetitive strain. So last Friday, my wrist started to swell, and I got to the office in the morning and it was swollen. So I probably stayed for about half an hour, and then I went to one of those walk-in emergency centres. And so my arm's been in a sling for about a week. I worked at home for a couple of days and then went into the office on Wednesday. And, there's obviously the fake, interest in my well-being. But I don't trust race suspects, so I'm sure they will use anything against me, including, the fact that I've got this problem with my arm. But anyway, so I'm been getting on with my work. However, obviously I'm not able to do as much with my arm in a sling. Now, on Wednesday, I was asked if I could go to an event on today or Friday. But I told my manager I'm not sure because I'm going to try and get in to see the doctor. I have a feeling she forwarded the email to my head of team because I think it was the same day she then came along and asked me if I could go. Now this is because one of the politicians has asked if somebody from the team could go along. And then my head of team had actually said to me, oh, well, the thing is the politician's not going because she's getting her windows installed. So I thought, hang on a minute here. Windows installed means she's got building work happening. I thought, well, why should I stop going to the hospital because this person is getting windows installed? And you know full well that obviously I've got a problem with my arm. I didn't say that to her, but I'm thinking that. Anyway, needless to say, I have taken the day off to try and get in to see the doctor. I just thought to myself, I didn't actually stop working with my arm, but what I'm not going to do is just get to the point where I'm making myself worse for things that, it's literally they just want to be able to say somebody from the team is there. It's not that I'll actually be doing anything. And so they finally found someone else to go along. But yeah, the sort of John Hen. I think in the past I probably would have felt more, anxious about it. But I decided now there will be no John Henryism. My arm, there's a problem with my arm. And these people clearly have demonstrated they do not care about me. And I will take that well-being day. I mentioned, I think it was last week or the week before, about the new base soldier in the team who packed up my desk and left her filth on the desk. I packed up her teacup with the coffee that she left in it, and the plastic water bottle, and everything was on her. Everything was in a pile waiting for her. Now, she actually moved her stuff, but what she did was take the cup and leave it on the side. There's a sort of table to the side of the desk that runs the floor, runs the span of the building. But because I'd moved her stuff nearer to the racist suspect male who sits behind me, the cup has been left there for over a week now. It must be now 2 weeks. And he was on leave for most of last week. So, and I was out of the office for the first 2 days of this week. So I don't quite know when he came back into the office, but certainly my first day in the office this week was Wednesday. So he's not moving that cup, and there's an empty glass there as well, and I'm certainly not touching it. And I mean, to be honest, it wasn't there, so he didn't leave it there. He hasn't asked me about it. I'm not saying anything. He was the racist suspect who accused me of being responsible for the fly infestation, which was actually the result of people spilling beer on the floor. So I'm hoping he doesn't open his mouth to me. But the race soldier is quite brazen. She deliberately left it there, and I know he can't be happy about it, because I can tell when he's in the mood. But yeah, so that's the passive aggressive racist antics that are going on in the building. I have been criminalized, in inverted commas. This week I was talking to one of the PAs about a briefing that needed to be prepared for said politician who's getting her windows done. And I was speaking to her from home, so I had her on loudspeaker. And she said to me, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm at home." She goes, "Oh, because you sound like you're in a cell." And I did my sort of shocked laugh thing, but because I was stunned, and then I quickly sort of paused, and I thought, okay, I need to codify, and in terms of my overall sort of progress, I need to really work on how I respond when people say things. I'm obviously not anticipating the racist antics. I'm not as codified on that in that way. So in terms of maybe my overall progress, I'm doing well. I think I'm still at 95%, but there are some new areas to work on. Being better at focusing on asking questions, and putting in place, or really practicing being silent when people say things, whether that be racist comments like that, or just, using silence as a strategy. So I'm probably at bronze with both of those. I mean, I'm much better with questions, but I'm not where I want to be. And the last thing I'll say on just being better with victims of racism, I mentioned the non-white female who I had to put in a grievance against, and her anti-blackness that she's been demonstrating over the last couple of weeks, particularly in response to when the team is required to draft answers to political questions. This month's questions rolled around again, and I had decided, because she'd irritated me in a team meeting, even though, my response was okay. I mean, I was irritated, but, I didn't do anything that would cause me to be reprimanded. I didn't like the fact that I was frustrated. So I gave it some thought, and in my mind, I decided that I am not going to allow her to irritate me anymore. I'm going to make the point of consciously, mentally saying, this person, whatever this person does, is not going to irritate me. And I think it's actually working, because this month she responded to the question that I allocated to her. I spoke to her about it because she was away when I sent the questions out, and we have to turn them around in quite a tight timeline. And so I spoke to her just to remind her that it was in her inbox. She was fine about it. She sent me the draft. She didn't copy in any race soldiers this time. And when I made a correction to her work, I sent it to her to say, look, I've made this change. Are you happy with it? She came back, and she, in the email, and she was happy with it, and that was fine. And so it worked out so much better. So we're making progress. I'll meet my line there, Gus.
Right on for making progress with other victims. I know a lot of us have big time problems with that. So right on. Glad to hear you were able to Yeah, do that. Minimizing conflict with. I think I put that in the description on a weekly basis, like figuring out ways to minimize conflict with other victims of racism as best we can. Well-being days. Love it. I think the system encourages us to do that sort of thing all the time, like to, whatever for how we're feeling, and doesn't matter, whatever we're going through, whatever stress and strife, come on and sacrifice for the team and all that. Like, well-being day. Absolutely love it. Take care of your arm. Hope it heals quickly. All for that. The passive aggressiveness, the leaving of their filth in your work area, of course, being done in a deliberate manner. The same thing we talked about that before. All of this, the stress, the strife, to add up John Henryism, the stress and the strife, hypertension, and just so that we're not thinking as well, just so all those little irritants and everything else just pile up with what they do to us on a regular basis. Even the comment on the phone about you sound like you're in a cell, like. Real, I'm not saying, any of these questions, but I mean, even just processing that, like, has anyone here received a phone call from someone in a cell? I haven't. Hey, maybe, I'm sure, but have you heard this white woman, racist? Do you have people call you from a cell? Like, that's, oh yeah, I'm accustomed. Teddy calls me from, his cell every Thursday. It sounds just like when he calls. That's what I'm accustomed to hearing on a weekly basis. Like, come on, it's not even logical. Like, again, things you would only say when talking to a nigger. That's what I associate niggers with. Monkeys, convicts. That's what you all do. That's what I think of when I think of niggers. So of course, anything on the phone, you probably got you locked up for selling drugs or what have you. That's what we do with niggers. Just being mindful of comments like that. Being mindful not to be upset, surprised, offended, even to be thinking new, like, oh my goodness, she might be a racist. You should have been thinking that anyway. It's just pointing out these little things. Sometimes they can be more flagrant with it and leaving things on your desk and things of that nature, shoving you in the hallway. She's talked about that before, but even these little things, just little reminders of who they are. And I think it's important because sometimes all of us, myself included, we forget. We think, oh, some days they might go a week where they're courteous. They don't call us nigger. They don't say any nigger jokes. They're courteous, almost treating us as though there is no system of racism. But then, boop, that little reminder, oh yeah, this is the system that we're in, and I need to make sure that I'm alert. But yeah, just paying attention to little comments like that. Very important. And I recommend listeners to not always feel like you have to respond. Sometimes, I think even as Stacy was saying, sometimes nothing. Don't need to say a word. Being great with not giving them the startled laugh. I have nothing to say. Oh, I sound like I'm calling from a cell. What else are we supposed to be talking about today? You can hit them with. You could always. I love Mr. Fuller's. I sound like I'm calling from a cell. What's on the agenda for the rest of Nigger Friday? And you just keep on with whatever else is on the agenda. Other folks who dialed in, if you have commentary you would like to share, line should be open. Last few moments. If folks have anything else they need to get in, the holiday impact, the workplace situation, feel free. We will be here tomorrow for the compensatory call-in, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And I will definitely have to update about prenatal yoga teaching, because then I will certainly have more to share if that is a regular gig for doing some teaching, which I am excited to do, teaching non-white people especially. Any other comments folks want to make sure they get in?
Could I ask you a question, Gus?
Yes, ma'am.
What has gotten you into yoga in the first place?
The stress from the flood. I'm still a flood victim. and being displaced. It was and is extraordinarily stressful being displaced from my residence and not being able to sleep in my bed and everything else, not having my little home office set up where I broadcasted from. Just all of that was super stressful. And Seattle, with its plentiful white population, they have yoga studios everywhere. So I took advantage. They have lots of cheap opportunities for yoga where you can go practice for free and get all these discounts and such because they have so many studios. So I went to do it to help with the stress, and it has been helpful with the stress and yeah, getting my weight down so that I can be a little healthier and hopefully live a little longer and a little healthier to practice or attempt to practice counter racism.
Just curious.
Gus, can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned gratitude earlier on, and you said something about it being tacky, and I was wondering what you meant.
With the U.S. holiday, or what they call holiday of Thanksgiving, so much of that is they will talk about gratitude, and they'll spend a whole lot of time this week up until about Sunday talking about, oh, I'm so grateful for, you know, such and such, and I'm so thankful for this. And we should all take the next 20 seconds to talk about all the things that we are grateful for. And I just think that's so tacky in a system of racism, white supremacy. I mean, number one, white people, the only thing that it should be, we are thankful for the opportunity to mistreat niggers, because that is the number one thing that they have shown they are interested in and want to do worldwide, mistreating niggers. And I never hear anybody, oh yeah, I'm thankful for the system of white supremacy. I'm thankful for the opportunity to mistreat niggers. They never say that. It's always a whole lot of nonsense and, oh, my family and house and all that. They don't care about any of that. Just every presentation that I've heard of it, as though there are some values in line with correctness and equality and brotherhood and humanity. And this whole holiday is associated with genocide of dark people. Everything about it. I mean, it's tacky, it's hypocritical. And again, the number one thing to be grateful for if you're classified as white is the mistreatment of niggers. So in a nutshell, that's my view on why it's tacky at best, all of the talk of gratitude in this part of the world for this holiday.
Yeah, Gus?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to add in some of what you were saying. Is just whoever during this time, for myself speaking, work and outside of work, family related, tends to celebrate this holiday. And for those of us in the States that are listening, that are able to kind of steer away from it, I was able to steer away from it this year and not celebrate it. I do appreciate some of the time with my family when it's constructive, but just to kind of let other people know you're not really alone in that aspect. A lot of us are trying to steer away from the bad vibrations, the bad energy of this time, because this holiday was brought up, as you just said, off the genocide of non-white people, and it was literally, and you can go look this up, literally every year after they did the first massacre, they celebrated by doing another massacre around the same exact time. So I'm just I have a strong belief on foundation, and if you build something on a false foundation, especially even on a negative, evil, baneful one like that, there's no way that could stand, and it's not healthy at all for the mind or the body or the spirit. Thank you.
Right on. Context of white supremacy, correct use of time and energy. That is something I emphasize. If they do say, hey, you don't have to come to the formal plantation for today. Sometimes they give you, 2-4 days off. They say you don't have to come back. You can leave Wednesday and don't have to come back until Monday. Correct use of time and energy. If you can have constructive time with people that you care about, bravo. You can take that time to work on other projects, do some yoga, do some self-care. That's always spectacular. That's great. But I mean, yeah, correct use of time and energy in the system of racism, white supremacy, that number one, and avoid tackiness. Avoid tackiness. Any other comments, workplace racism related? Last few moments.
I just wanted to ask Jay, I think it was Jay, just about the project that he has been blocked from doing. What is... I just think he has some leverage in the fact that this team has come back to him to work on the project, and especially as they clearly, or question, the person who forwarded the follow-up request, are they aware that his manager and director had first said that he shouldn't be working on it? Because I just wanted to clarify that point.
No, they're not aware. I plan on making them aware at the exact same time. I'm kind of, as it's funny as this is going in the same way Gus is stating that correct use of time and energy. That's pretty much what I've been doing this time off. Since I have I had yesterday and today off, I've been just prepping and planning so that when I come in to work the next day, I'll have everything planned out, sending an email to the group that's asking me to do the project, letting them know that my manager and director are not allowing it, and then also sending I think I'm going to do exactly what was stated. It was on my mind, but it's just obvious that it's a best course of action is to send the email to my manager and the director stating that they're reaching back out to me because the job was not done properly.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification. Yeah, I would also just send the follow-up email to the team, just reiterating that you are more than willing to help out, just so that they have a direct, direct communication with you, and they can see that you're willing. And there's been the term that's been used earlier, a team player. Amit Malan.
Thank you,
Are
Stacey.
they singling you out for saying that are they singling you out saying that the project wasn't complete or wasn't done properly because of your doing, or? I'm
No.
confused on that part.
Oh, no, not at all. They're aware that I wasn't involved in the project because, when they first initially reached out to me, I told them that before I can actually take action within the project, I will have to let my manager be aware, henceforth not going over his head, for lack of a better analogy, and following the proper chain of command. So they know that I had no hand in it.
Okay.
Context of White Supremacy. Any other folks with workplace racism commentary? I feel like we still didn't get a whole lot of errors. A good number of people did share, but I felt like we still had a good number of folks who were spectating on the errors. But yeah. Person wrote in. Make sure I share. My boss talked about this at the beginning of the program. My boss has been denying my pay time off because they think in using it to go on job. Because they think I'm using it to go on job interviews. I came to the conclusion because the last time they denied me, he sends a broadcast email saying to not make plans before getting approval for paid time off. I use the word they because my white female manager controls my black department supervisor. Absolutely. My white female supervisor spends all day terrorizing me. She watches me all day long. It's so bad that when she went to a Thanksgiving party, the company's other office in another state, I got a blank call from another employee who didn't say anything, but I heard her in the background telling him to send all clients directly to me. In other words, every client that the office deals with went straight to me. The problem is I'm not licensed to deal with clients from certain states, so it was just a terrible work day for me. I'm not the only employee in my department, so that's how we can see she's dedicated to mistreating me. The following Monday, she came back to the office and called me just to abuse me and accuse me of not being a team player. There's that word again. It went in one ear and out the other. I reported her to the head office and they came in to conduct an investigation on harassment. They claimed it would be anonymous and that they won't release any information provided in the investigation room to anyone. But since then, my white boss hasn't been terrorizing me. Neither have her minions. I'm not letting my guard down. I'm still recording all. Bravo. Last sentence, most important. You cannot ever let your guard down, regardless of what happens. If they have paused for the moment, you should think, or you should conclude that they have just retreated to retrench, and then they're going to attack again. It'll just be she or whomever coming back with more mistreatment and more abuse to retaliate. So be prepared. If you have your recording system set up or whatever you're doing to protect yourself as best you can. Spectacular. That PTO. That's why I say that pretty much every week, because for so many people that is crucial. So many black people have problems on the job around that, trying to get paid time off, trying to get sick leave, personal time for whatever the case may be. Even if this person was doing it to get another job, how could you blame them? But we've heard this before, them being manipulative, being sneaky, even with the PTO, wait up until the last minute and then boom, deny you. And then the enjoyment, they send the email out, make sure you get it approved so you're not making plans before you have your PTO already approved, which in my view, that's solid codification anyway. I think we had Stacy who shared before about requesting time off, and they did the same thing. Wait around, mess over your time and energy, and then deny it. And then let's see if she's going to be tough and be a renegade and not come in and just not come in. And then we can write her up or fire or whatever. And she said, nope, not going to approve it. Oh, well, I'll just come on in and be ready to roll. And she said she seemed like they were surprised. Like, oh, man, we had plans. We were going to fire that nigger. So with the PTO, and what I would do, go back to policy and procedure. Now, what is our stated procedure? Because you're a part of the company. I'm part of the family, as they say. What is our stated policy and procedure on PTO? Now, if I followed the procedure and it didn't get approved, why is that? And in particular, is this a pattern where my PTO is not being approved and other people are able to get theirs? I would go right back to policy and procedure, because this cannot be a situation where my TO is consistently being rejected. My time and energy is not being valued as a member of the team, family, as they say. Any thoughts on what the person? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was going to say, in that story, it reminded me of a situation in New Orleans where I had reported it was a white female manager that I worked for at another store in New Orleans. And they had came in, the DM and the regional manager came in and met with me. I had recorded that incident with them. It was a long recording. But nonetheless, I had written a statement. And from that particular incident, I had decided, for myself at least, that unless it's going to something like the EEOC or something like that, because of the history of everything that's been going on, I'm not writing any more statements for them when I have a complaint towards a manager or a team member, because they basically turned around and used it against me, because when I saw it in somehow I had came into the office and this was later on in Florida. The manager forgot to log out, and I guess he was doing notations or documents on other team members for disciplinary purposes. And so I was able to log in and see on my file that they had the incident in question, but it was literally my statement, and the manager had used basically just whited out whatever part in my statement that I used and just changed the name around and made it seem as if this is something she wrote, because I have the actual draft here. And so I was just like, oh, wow, okay. And so that's why I just said, moving forward, like I just record everything. And I won't do any, if they ask me for a statement other than the situation with the car, I'm just not doing any written statements, not signing anything, especially if you know that you're the one that's coming in reporting. I would just tell her to, depending on what the situation is in the history, to think twice about if they ask her to write a statement or this, that, and the other. I personally couldn't. I wouldn't do it. And if they want her to sign anything, or I just wouldn't sign anything, because they're going to try and find something to turn around and say, well, just so that way everybody's on the same page, we're having everybody sign this, and later on you find out you're actually the only one that was made to sign a document, a fictitious document. So that's what they did with me. But I didn't sign, of course, so I later found out that I was the only one that was presented with it.
Wow, you're the only one that's suspicious right there. Always, always be very, very cautious when being asked to sign things in the workplace, and just read, caution, lots of caution exercise. I think Mr. Fuller has even recommended that it might be one to request additional time to, verify exactly what it is that you're being asked to sign, to make sure that, this is legit and this is not going to cause me problems in the future. Unless someone had something they can get in next 60 seconds.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yes, it's really quick, guys. A judge gave me one of his old paintings from out of his office. He asked if I wanted it, so I said okay. So I took it downstairs, and the white people definitely were in shock, and I used that word carefully because they asked me where did I get it from, and I said, well, the chief judge gave it to me. He's about to retire, and the one of the wardens were like, oh, really? Wow. And leading to my next one, the supervisor used manipulative deception by putting the potluck food list on my desk when I came in on Monday, and they had then hung the picture up, and they thought that since the picture was hung up, they thought I was going to participate, and I still said no. So she picked up the list, and she was like, yeah, this painting looks very good. It looks very good over here. And she thought I was going to say, yes, I'll participate. And I said, no. She said, well, you're not going to. And I said, nope, I'm not doing it. I said, no, I'm not doing it. So that was 2 quick reports.
Still trying to finagle him into the potluck. Got to come in here and get some of our poisoned victuals for the holiday season. I don't know what's up with that. That's interesting too about the picture giving. Whites handing out stuff as they retire from a long career, no doubt of practicing white supremacy from the bench in Florida, no less. Well, I hope folks. Well, other than Stacy, I hope folks survive the so-called holidays safely. I guess it's just another day on the plantation for Stacy and the folks outside the states, which it will be once we get through this weekend for the rest of us. This nonsense will be over, and we can go back to our normal efforts of replacing white supremacy with justice immediately. Again, we'll be here tomorrow for the compensatory call-in, 9 Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. We should be back. Global Sunday Talk on Racism, Sunday, 12 noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Global system of white terrorism. Much obliged to all the folks who tuned in. Hope it was a constructive investment of your Friday evening. Again, sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. I know we have listeners in New Orleans. I don't know if we have folks who work in the food industry, but if they have concluded that alcohol was a part of the problem for the rampant sexual terrorism, and that relaxing, rejecting, putting down the liquor would help to solve the problem, I think we could apply the same logic to counter racism. Dr. Welsing would certainly co-sign. In addition to being sober, let's be buckled in every single time that we are in a vehicle, driver or passenger. Let's do all that we can to minimize contact with race soldiers, badge or no. That's it. Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other Black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of Black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another Black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed.
Goodbye.
I'm a victim, brother. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.